Howdy folks, and welcome to Bagel Dog DIY. I'm your host Ben. In today's video we're going to be adding some decking or a little shelf to this niche by the front door. As you can see when I climb up the ladder here, there is no decking or plywood or any sort of surface up there, just these 2x4s. We're going to fix that, we're going to fill that in so we can use this as a space to store some artwork or some Christmas decorations or what have you. It's a simple project, pretty straightforward. The first thing I'm going to do is measure the space. I'm going to be using all plywood that's left over from the laundry room remodel that I'm working on right now. Those videos will be coming in the future. So this is just leftover scrap plywood. I'm just going to measure it. When you measure for plywood like this, I'm going to take my measurement, and then I'm going to leave myself a ½ inch extra, so I'm going to cut my board a ½ inch short. The reason for that is this is sheetrock on 3 sides. Even if it was sheetrock on 2 sides, it's never going to be square. When sheetrockers do corners, they always build up a lot of mud. It never gets sanded down to perfectly square again. So leaving myself that ½ inch extra is going to make sure these boards actually fit. Climbing up the ladder here, I got these 2 boards. They're about 10 inches wide. Like I said, these were scrap. And as you can see, even with my ½ inch extra, they fit pretty snug. You'll see me using my hand as a hammer right here to get them all in there. That's something I don't recommend. It's supposed to give you arthritis in the long term. Go get a hammer. But I'll get these spaced out and then I'll get them screwed down. There's the hand hammer. And I am using, this is 3/4 inch plywood. Usually I would use a ½ inch plywood for a shelf like this, especially because there's so much support under it. There's a stud every 16 inches. But I had it. It's laying around, so I'm just going to use it. It's essentially a free shelf project. Now there's the hammer I'm talking about. Get that tapped right into place and then just go to town decking it. I probably went overkill on the screws here, but again, these boards aren't very wide, so I kind of wanted to screw on either side of them. I think I skipped every other stud. These aren't going anywhere, but I didn't want them to be rocking back and forth. I didn't want there to be a lip between the boards. So after I get those screwed down, I'm going to go to the shop and I'm going to cut my last piece. It actually has to be done in 2 pieces. Again, this is all done out of scrap wood. Again, you can't see it, doesn't matter. So I'm going to go to the shop. I don't actually have a table saw in my current shop, so I'm going to use a track saw. Track saw won't do everything a table saw will do. You can't cut dados on it and things like that. But it is something, if you don't have room for a table saw, they do a lot of things really, really well. You can cut really straight lines with them. You can cut wood that's not straight, unlike in a table saw. So it is a cool tool to have, especially if you don't have a table saw. It was kind of a compromise I made until I get a little bit more shop space. So you see me laying out the plywood here. I'm going to put it up on some little pieces of 4x4. Again, this is the bench I built in the last video, so it's getting used already. This is why I don't build my miter saw into my benches. I only have 1 workbench in my shop, and I need to be able to actually use it to work on. So if I had a cutout there from my miter saw, it makes using the full width of this workbench or full length of this workbench kind of a pain in the butt. So that's my reasoning for not. If I had more shop space, I would build a table just for my miter saw, and it would never move, and it would have feet out on it and everything like that. But when you got a small space, you got to make do with what you got. So setting up the track saw is fairly easy. You put your marks down. I'm going to put the plywood up on some 4x4 blocks here, like I said. Those are just sacrificial. I can cut right through them. And then you set your track literally right on your marks, and the saw cuts down the marks. You will see me in this piece. This piece is a little bit longer than my 1 piece of track, and I didn't feel like putting the 2 pieces of track together, so I cut the first about half of it, and then I just scoop my track down. Again, we're just doing decking here. This doesn't have to be super accurate. You're not making a cabinet. You're not making any fine furniture. We're going to go with our 1/4 inch tolerances on either end are fine. So just laying it out, getting it marked. I'll get my tracks set up there. These tracks do also have clamps on them. I could clamp this down to the board if I wanted to, but there's also rubber on the back of them. They don't really move a lot. Again, if I was doing something super accurate, if I was making cabinet boxes, if I was making a cut that needed to be right exactly exact, I would use the clamps. I would clamp this down. But I'm just going to set it right on my lines and run my saw down it. I don't think Bagel Dog actually makes an appearance in this video, but you'll see me keep looking over my shoulder. He's in the front yard just running around. I'm making sure he's not running off. And so there's the saw itself. It's pretty much just like a circular saw. You can use it as a circular saw. You can lock the blade down, but it's only got a 6-inch blade on it, not a 7 1/4. It sets right in the track there, though. Plug it in, plunge it down, and just push it right along the track. I first used track saws when I worked for a bookstore, a large bookstore chain in Arizona. And we did a lot of work at nighttime in the stores. I was like a maintenance guy. I built a lot of shelving and different things, little store fixtures for the bookstore itself. So you couldn't really have a table saw and move quickly in and out of these buildings. And that's where I first discovered these track saws. And they do a lot of things really well. Check in, make sure the dog's okay. I'm actually wearing shoes for once. I don't have my Crocs on. Funny. Alright, now we got our 2 pieces cut out. We're going to go back over, climb up that ladder, get them hammered in, get them screwed down. So there's my hammer there. These hammers here, this is something I actually learned from a Finnish cabinet installer. They're rubber on one side, and there's some type of like a little bit harder plastic on the other. They make them in all sorts of sizes. You can get them all the way up to like sledgehammer size. You can literally beat on wood with these. You can hit, finished cabinets. You can hit all sorts of stuff. And with the rubber side, it doesn't mar. It doesn't leave a mark. It doesn't do anything. So this is just a tool that I've picked up over the years. Again, a Finnish cabinet maker installer showed me this. It's what they use to literally beat cabinets into place. But they work really well. It doesn't mar up your wood. Usually, in the past, I would have another piece of wood, and I would hit that piece of wood on top of my other piece of wood, so you don't mar up your finished piece. But this hammer has really been a game changer for me ever since I've been using it for about a year now. But ever since I saw them, they're just installing cabinets and they're just wailing on them with this hammer. The finish, no protection at all. So I'd say run out and get yourself one of these hammers if you're going to do any type of woodwork at all. And they're a little bit more heavy duty than like a leather face hammer or something like that. They have some oomph behind them. So get this all hammered in and we'll get it screwed down. I think this screw gun's actually on its last legs. Let some smoke out the other day, but it's about 8 years old, so I'm not going to give it any hard time for struggling. But still going strong. And then right as I get my last screws in, I decide, let's test out the space. Luckily, it's supported. It didn't fall down or anything. So yeah, clearly it's strong enough. It'll hold some sculptures. It holds me. Might even hold a grand piano if we could fit one. But there's how it looks on top. Just the 3 boards scabbed together. Now I'm going to measure for the front. This board I'm not going to cut short. I'm actually going to cut it a hair long, about 1/8 of an inch longer than my measurement. And I'm going to make a lot of trips back and forth to the saw, just cutting off a tiny, tiny amount and setting it back up there. Because this is going to be the trim board. I want it to fit perfect. This trim board is actually some cedar I found at Lowe's. I don't know if it was mispriced. It was labeled cedar. But it was $6 a board for these 10-foot boards, and that makes absolutely no sense because cedar is much, much more expensive than that. So I picked up 5 or 6 of them knowing I would use them for trim. They're not the nicest boards. They have some waviness to them, so I do have to sand them before I use them as trim. But I kind of like the character and the knots. So I sand these up, and then I put some just antique oak finish on them. Usually I would actually use a tung oil. It's kind of one of my favorite wood finishes, old, simple, standard, rub it on. But for some reason I had this bottle on my shelf, so I put that on there. Just a simple rubbed finish, nothing fancy, and to preserve the natural color of the wood. But so first you see me cut off one end just to square it up, make sure it's a nice end. Then I measure down and make a real accurate cut. And then what you don't see is me doing like 5 trips back and forth to the saw and shaving off tiny, tiny amounts to get this trim board to fit just perfect up there in the space. And here's a trick for when you're sanding. What I'm doing at the beginning here, you see me taking this pencil. I'm just putting scribble marks down the whole face of this board. It's an old woodworker trick. Basically, it makes sure you're sanding evenly. You sand until your mark is gone. You do that down the whole length of the board. And if you want to do another layer of sanding, you put another mark down the board. Just make sure that you're sanding the whole board consistently. You're just sanding your pencil mark away. So now, the boring part, just sanding away, getting rid of all my pencil marks. This is just 150 grit sandpaper, nothing fancy. It's a trim board. You don't have to take it to 300 or anything like that, and you don't have to start with 80. There was some little bumps on the surface of this from when the board was manufactured. I'm just knocking all those down, getting rid of my pencil marks. Now you'll see me rub on this oil, this antique oil. That's just a rag applied. You just rub it on. No big deal. Easy peasy. And then this next part was cool. I didn't even have to move my air compressor. My hose was long enough. So uncurled the hose, got out my 16 gauge nailer, got up on the ladder here. You're going to see me look inside this vent. What I'm looking for actually is which side of the vent is up against a 2x4. That's where I'm going to put my first 2 nails. The top nail all along this board is going to hit the 2x4s that my decking is screwed to, but the bottom nail that I put in actually needs to hit a 2x4 in the wall. Otherwise, you're just going into sheetrock, and that ain't going to hold anything. So get my board set in place. I put a couple nails in the middle. You'll see me get my stud finder, locate a couple studs, work my way down the board, making sure it's flush up against the wall, and just adding in my nails. Don't have to go overkill here. Just 2 these brad nails on each stud. It's a trim board. You're not going to do pull-ups off of it. Well, hopefully you're not going to do pull-ups off of it. And then just like that, it's all done. I got the trim up. I'm going to carry this nice art piece up the ladder. A buddy of mine, Colton Lunton, made. He's a ceramic artist. Get it set up there. I have a few more sculptural pieces that'll be going up there. They're in storage. I got to go out to Arizona and bring a few things back. But for now, it's decked. It's got a trim board on it. I'm not going to paint the decking or anything. I don't know why I would. Again, you can't see it. It's got a nice trim board on it. First piece of sculpture up there. I think it looks good. Thanks for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. There'll be more in the future. Like I said, I'm working on a washing room remodel, laundry room remodel, whatever you want to call it. Lots of little odds and ends around the house. A few more videos of things the home inspector found, repairs. So stay tuned. There'll be more in the future. Cheers. Go make some stuff.